You are listening to the ReRACEables Podcast.
Give you a nice little detour.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the ReRACEables Podcast for season 37, episode 2. I want to welcome in first and foremost, Josh and Nicole. Thank you for coming in tonight, everybody. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How's it going?
All the way in Osaka, or is that actually Mark's heartbeat that is pounding? Because the intersection strikes. The bad luck for Mark.
I thought it was interesting first that nobody held out for another team. Everybody just went with whichever team came next, that's who they paired up with.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the only team that had the choice was actually Mark and Brett, which is kind of crazy. I feel like everyone else was just waiting for the next team to arrive.
Right.
The only team is that Ernest and Bridget were already there. Mark and Brett were just arriving just as the boys were arriving behind them. And instead of going with the team that was behind them, they went with the team in front of them, which in my mind in that moment probably made sense. And they probably didn't quite think it through. But yeah, we saw it brought them to a rough episode.
But they also didn't know what the challenge would entail at that point when they were selecting who they were being paired up with. All they heard was it's an intersection. Yeah. Did they even hear the line, who's ready to beat the competition, I think?
No, that was the roadblock. So all they knew is that an intersection was ahead and that they were going to have to pair up with another team.
Right. So it was impossible to judge.
But it wasn't impossible. You could have judged.
You could have
judged. And especially, let's just take it from Mark and Brett's perspective, right? They get there. They know they're in the front. Ernest and Bridget are standing there. You have to know that Carson and Jack and let's just say one other team may be coming up shortly. Is it a good strategy move at this stage in the game to profile Ernest and Bridget? Again, it's the beginning of the leg. Is it the right time to profile them, to judge them, to say, no, we're not working with you because you're XYZ? Or is it too early and they did what they should have done and worked with them?
I think it would have put a big target on their back if they made a move like that, because that would have been a big slap in the face to Ernest and Bridget, for no apparent reason other than just judgment.
Done that. You would have done what Mark and Brett did.
I think so. I would have had a hard time saying, you know what, even though you guys are here already, we're going to see who else.
Yeah, we want two younger people, not one and, older guy. Josh, what are your thoughts? Should they have gone with Ernest and Bridget like they did, or should they have waited for greener pastures?
Well, seconding Nicole's thoughts in that they were playing the social game, and I quoted that we said that the first two teams here would go in to the people who were behind them. So trying to keep that everyone is fair, that we still like you, but we're actually just going with the solution that the race is going. When I was thinking about it further in the episode, I actually said that it was a smart decision, because what if they did go with Carson and Jack, and then them two were in the back, right? Then you're now fighting with a better team for the final. At least going in with them two, you know that even if everybody else leaves, Mark and Brett are way stronger than Ernest and Bridget, and you're not coming in last this episode.
Good point.
I was thinking, it made me think about, of course, the man, the best there is, was, there will be, Boston Rob, when he quit the challenge, took the penalty, and then worked to make somebody else quit the challenge, eating the meat. And then he knew, okay, at least I'm going to be ahead of them.
At least.
Right? So the strategy was that they had to mutually agree. It kind of foreshadowed what was going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like, because one team was going to stink, and it happened to be Ernest and Bridget who were there first. Once you're stuck to a team, no matter how many attempts it takes, once you're out of there, then you just have to beat that one team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's where the intersection kind of, at first, maybe screw you over, but no matter what, give you a shot.
And I appreciated that it was early in the season. I think I would be really frustrated to see one of my favorite teams go home if we were 4 or 5 more episodes in and they lost because of the intersection, because of another team. So it feels like this, at least, it was also interesting to have the intersection first, so you could make up or lose ground after that. So even though there was an intersection, which you're relying on another team, it did feel like it was this was the fairest of the options in playing it in the game.
I agree, because when Mark and Brett got to the detour and they caught up to Han and Holden and I want to say Nick and Mike almost, or there was a couple teams still there.
Mm-hmm.
It felt much fairer than if it would have been the second or third challenge in the episode, in the leg, and it would have been the end.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a total like decider, and then it would have just kind of been a taxi cab and a sprint to decide who's last. Okay, so can we talk now about Mark and Ernest? Not only was it an intersection, it was a roadblock intersection where one member of each team could only do it, as a roadblock makes you. They had to be the ones that worked together as a pair doing the drumming. I really liked the idea of taking a roadblock, but then making a new pair for a challenge. I thought that was really clever and compelling, and we really got that with Mark and Ernest.
I did wish that too. I wished when they said the intersection is back, I wish there was like a quick montage of times that the intersection like was really amazing and also like sunk a team. It would have kind of built up that excitement about it.
Yeah, a little bit of history might have been a nice gap filler there.
But I did like how we saw certain teams working very well together. And there was strategy involved. People played to their strengths, like
Jonathan and Jack,
but
Crush
also
it.
the Utah dad.
Oh, Scott, forget it.
He really
Scott,
took
Bernie.
the lead in a great way and helped Bernie out, pointed her eye to certain details that she wouldn't have otherwise detected. And then hearing like, oh, it really like bonded us as a team from, I forget who
That
said
was
that.
Alyssa and Josiah talking about their relationship with Nick and Mike.
Yes. So where Mark and Brett really struggled and it made them really dislike the team that they were paired with, others had the
Ernest,
opposite effect.
I give Mark so much credit. Shout out Mark.
Shout out Mark.
Shout out Mark. The guy kept his composure the whole time.
Yeah.
The guy tried to support Ernest, because you know damn well Mark would have got that in 5 seconds with Brett.
Yes.
Brett probably has played that drum in Cirque du Soleil while hanging upside down.
He probably has.
Right? But like the fact that he still showed empathy in that moment, and the fact that he still thought about, I just met Ernest. I don't know how to motivate him. I don't know how to support him. Wow. Like, this is why I put these guys first.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
But you could tell he was frustrated.
He was destroyed.
It was killing him. Attempt after attempt after attempt.
I think that's the beauty of the intersection, though, right? And combining it with the roadblock.
I think it worked exactly how the producers hoped it would work.
You got drama, you got confusion, lack of communication, but then you got support from the partners. You got empathy from the people who are just smashed together, like Mark to Ernest.
Front runners being brought down to the back.
And people in the back slingshotted to the front.
Yes.
It was incredible.
I have really enjoyed the editing this season. It does feel really, really crisp and strong. However, I did notice that when they were doing a confessional with Dad, with Ernest, he was practically crying in the dark, and you can
Yes.
tell that it was like, well, they probably get eliminated.
And I did say, like, nope, Josh is he's gonna hit the button.
You can count on me.
So was there any other standout performers or relationships from the intersection?
I think character arc this episode was really interesting for Bernie and Kerrigan. I mean, the first time we saw them, they were yelling at each other in that airport, and they were on that last flight, right? They were doomed for the bottom, and coming in and matching up with Scott and Lori, or with Scott, and really just kind of taking that drum beat by storm and really catapulting them. They were the first team to get to do it on the first try, right?
They were the last two teams to enter the intersection, and they were the only team to complete the intersection roadblock on the first try.
Yeah, absolutely incredible, right? To watch them go from that fighting all the way up, right? And I think that's just something to note in the wit of the team.
I was also impressed by Jonathan. I thought he did a very good performance. Very quickly picked up on it.
He was just in rhythm, the way he was playing those drums. It looks like
Natural.
yeah. He mentioned a music background, and you could see it. You could see his rhythm, and Jack was right there with him. A little bit more static, but like they were an incredible pair, without a doubt. And I like the idea of like teams having to then detach from their own partner, latch on to a new partner, and see what happens. How do you actually work together? It may not be like we're forming an alliance, but you got to work together. And you got to find how to work with that person and only that person, not just your partner. And I think that's where somebody like Scott. Scott, to me, was the real standout of the episode. The guy was incredible. He went into dad mode, he said. And it was such a great way to put it, right? Like, here he is. He gets paired with Bernie, who's could be his daughter, even though he's only capable of having sons. Like, he's only capable of having kids that are sons. So that was probably a cool experience for him too. Like, you raise 8 sons. It's like, oh, I get to work with this. Okay, great. This is a little different, but he just ultimately, it's no different for him to just go into dad mode, understand what his child, his kid, aka Bernie in that circumstance, is struggling with, and say, hey, let me help you. Let me show you how to do this. And I guarantee you, the missionary dad of 8 with a great marriage for 25 years, mild-mannered, he's probably got dad jokes for days. Just easygoing personality meshed so well with her and was such a counterbalance to the Bernie and Kerrigan that we saw earlier in the airport. Like, how are you not rooting for Scott and Lori?
I am.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Scott shine. I did have a note that I wanted to flag. Right after doing the drums, they had to go to the bridge in Japan, and it was Bernie and Kerrigan, Scott and Lori who were running over to the bridge. And when they picked up on it, Lori was the first one there. She outran the 3 others. So just as much as we say that Scott's got it going on, I think Lori's a hidden gem too.
Well, we said that in the Power Rankings pod. I love this team. I was high on them. I'm even higher.
Yup, I love them.
Yeah. Yes.
And they have the clip at the end when they're like in the taxi trying to rush to the finish line, and Scott's just got his arm up on the seat and he's just talking right to the camera. I think that they really do just have such a chill vibe. They're going to stay level-headed. They're smart. They're here to play the game. They're here to have fun, and they do truly love each other.
Yeah. and that little turn in the cab, the little kiss.
Yeah.
There's a lot of their life has taken them to this point. Their relationship has gotten them to this point, and they're excelling. Amazing.
Do you think we would have picked up on those little mannerisms a little bit more if we actually got interview clips with them preseason?
Yes, it's an emphatic yes. It would have been nice to see even a minute of teams' dynamics.
Well, yes.
Anything. Yeah.
What if we got their audition videos? What if they released their audition clips?
Well, I'm surprised they didn't do that because they did have a little bit of like the home movie of showing in Survivor 48 when they got the call that says you're on the cast. But I think that would be an interesting wrinkle too, to like maybe even more so in The Amazing Race, because it is about the two people interacting, not us getting to know the individual like in Survivor. Hey, Amazing Race, if you're listening,
And we know you are.
and we know you are,
First, put Tom on Survivor, and then
Yes.
release the clips of their auditions.
yeah, like cut up a minute of it. Put that on the social media. Give us something. Come on. I want to go back to the airport. On the ReRACEables podcast, we love the airport. We love it. And you know what else we love on the ReRACEables podcast?
What?
Airport and flight visuals.
Yes.
Thank
Another improvement in visuals.
Unbelievable. It makes such a difference because literally as we're watching, the action's happening. And we think it's going to be only these two flights. And then a third flight pops up. And we think, oh, there's going to be four teams on that last flight. Nope. There's going to be now 7 on the second flight. And all of a sudden, poof, our wishes come true, Josh.
Oh, I love to see it. I love a graphic. It just keeps everybody knowing what's going on. Very, very clear throughout a race around the world, and you know who you're rooting for and where you're fighting. I did notice that Japan was oddly deserted. Was that just me? I felt like there was nobody around anytime they got to that airport, or even in the mall when they were rushing to get to the lounge. It did feel a little bit pre-planted, but I did still love the element of the travel and the airport.
There was nobody at the Temple Pagoda. There was nobody at the sumo wrestling facility. There was hardly anybody on the streets. There was nobody in the airport.
Nobody. Go back and watch it. They all like run out of the airport and there's not a single soul there.
Right. Right. Even all like when they were getting the cabs, nobody there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's weird.
Let's turn to some of the choices that teams had to make this episode. First, the 6:05 flight with a connecting flight. Little risk there. Or do you play it safe and do you take the flight that would have gotten you there direct, but a half hour later?
If I'm in the top of the pack, I would take the safe one. If I'm in the bottom of the pack, I would take the risky one. I think that with so many teams left in the race, if I'm teams 1 through 5, you know that you just want to just go, just get there, be safe. You don't need to get there 10 minutes, like what they say, a half an hour earlier.
30
You
minutes.
don't really need that. If you're in the top 5, you're like, as long as I'm not going to be in the bottom. But if you're in the bottom, you're probably fighting a little bit harder and wanting to make that risky decision. That 30 minutes does mean a lot more so that you're not at the back. That would be my opinion.
I agree completely. That's the right way to play.
Did you notice that Ernest kind of came into that travel agency without even knowing what was going on and said, "Can we get that same flight?"
Yes.
I thought that was kind of interesting because they were also kind of in that middle of the pact and they were like, as long as we're on the same flight as someone else, it doesn't actually matter. We just got to get there. I'm not trying to find the best flight and I'm not trying to take any risks. I thought that was kind of interesting.
To add on to that, I thought it was interesting that Pops and Jeff and Melinda and Erica
Yeah.
decided to just kind of keep on the person that is, what would you call those people?
Travel agents?
Whatever, just keep on the people who could ultimately book you the flights. In the end, it didn't really make a big difference in the entire leg of the race, but I don't know that I would have done that, right? Like, I feel like the airport is either something that you're gonna do like an Ernest, be like, we'll take the same one. We don't want to do any of this work. They already did it. Let's just copy them, and it worked out. And then we could just turn off that piece of the brain versus what Pops and Jeff, Melinda, and Erica had to do, which was keep working, keep grinding, keep asking, keep talking to somebody.
Mm.
And it worked out. They got a better flight. Something to consider when we get on the race. That's all I'm saying.
And Bernie and Carrigan were not in the right mindset in that moment to do that.
I thought it was interesting with them that interaction happened in the airport because it's downtime. You're waiting on a flight. There's nowhere else you need to be. You're in the airport. You're near the gate. And it's just like, okay, let's work this out. And then who was there? Scott, kind of like slumping in his chair. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Oh, he was snooping.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely sat behind a bedroom door or three and listened to his children bicker and fight and be like, do I have to intervene here? Do I have to intervene? No, Dad. Dad, just take a step back. And that's got to feel great to hear your competitors ripping into each other.
Oh, yeah.
At the detour, you had the mochi.
Mochi.
You had the mochi balls. You had to make 12 of them, or the sumo mawashi. To me, this was an obvious choice, but Nicole, let's start with you. Which one would you go with?
Definitely sumo mochi. Mawashi. Sorry. I said
You can't
sumo
choose
mochi.
both.
Sumo mawashi. Definitely the clear choice. I mean, and I think everyone that picked sumo mawashi, including the teams that struggled, did not regret choosing sumo mawashi.
I agree. Yeah, it was a no-brainer. I'm putting on a sumo belt and I'm not pounding mochi.
Yeah, and unless I was a lumberjack, I would go at the mochi ones.
Who actually did terrible in the competition?
Well, because they were only half good at it. They were good at the
All they
sledgehammer.
know is pound. That's all they know. They don't look at the size.
No, they only own sleeveless shirts.
That's it. That's all they got.
And then when they had to be dainty and delicate and inform them, they
It's-
needed Courtney and
It's
Jasmine.
all gross motor, no fine motor.
Correct.
There was a great quote there. Just make them mushroom sized. And Jeff is like, well, they're all different sized mushrooms.
Right. He can't even figure out which mushroom. No, you have to go Mawashi. If you're in Japan and you're on the Amazing Race and there's any way you can get in front of or involved in sumo, where do I sign? I totally related to Josiah's excitement. I don't have a wrestling background like he mentioned he did, but if I went to Japan, and I hope we get to Japan for any reason, if it was on the Amazing Race, even better, but I would love to go to a sumo wrestling event and see that. Did you see that expert?
It was a wonderful expert. I loved his like fat, squinty face of inspection. It was very good.
He was definitely the most theatrical sumo they had.
Oh yeah.
That was good casting for him.
Yes.
And I just love how just massive they were, and just
I loved the need to blur. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yes. I just got that. Yeah.
Certain angles, it needed to be blurred.
Even though you're not actually like pushing the sumo wrestler out of the ring, just to be able to like press up against his big sumo body, you know how, like, you saw how excited the teams were. Like, what a interesting, bizarre, but awesome experience.
I kind of wish they had to like actually push one out instead of them pushing for like 5 seconds and the sumo just stepping backwards out of the ring. But it would have taken them all day.
Can we talk about Team Yellow, Courtney and Jasmine, and Melinda and Erica? Why would they choose Mochi? I mean, especially Melinda and Erica. I'm just thinking, like, your mom and daughter, why are you pounding Mochi? It does not make sense to me. Do those both of those teams just really are they gonna be in the chopping block in the next few weeks? Are they no shotters?
I think Erica and Melinda did impress me with their airport game. Don't see that fight. I don't see that passion from Courtney and Jasmine quite yet.
Questionable gameplay.
Those teams are kind of they know their limitations, and we'll see how far or how short that gets them. I think also they probably were just intimidated by the idea of sumo.
Mm.
Where like everybody else seemed gung ho, and obviously like Nick and Mike couldn't wait to just try to push the sumo wrestler with all their might, right? Courtney and Jasmine, it makes sense that they're not running into some sumo.
Yeah, fair.
You know? Okay, power rankings update
Wow.
after 2 episodes.
Whoa.
Josh had a perfect first episode, folks, but we have cut into his lead with Ernest and Bridget going out. Nicole removes an 11 from her, which brings her score to 75. I had Ernest and Bridget 8th, which makes my score 74. And Josh, here we come. Josh had them 5th. So his lead now drops to only a 1-point lead with a low score of 73. We're back, Nicole.
Woohoo!
Josh, where were we wrong on Bridget and Ernest? Because you had them 5th, I had them 8th, Nicole had them even 11th. They go out 13th. Where did we have them wrong?
Ernest. It's him. He was a police chief. He seemed fairly fit, but he just could not hold a beat. Guy cannot hold a beat, and I think that's where I had him wrong.
Now, I don't want to make this generalization, but it's another police officer. Going back to Mike and Mo.
Shout out Mike and Mo.
Right, the statistically worst team in the history of the Amazing Race. Who came in last place in the first episode. Then COVID hit. They get invited back onto the race. They had to do a speed bump, and then they get bounced in last again.
Pitiful.
Really bad. And here we go, though. We have Ernest, the 59-year-old retired chief. He's got no rhythm. They had a little rap in the car, and that was cool. He could beatbox, but he could not make a beat.
I feel bad for his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. If Bridget does the drums, do they go out?
No. And I even more than I feel bad for Bridget, I felt bad for him because he has the guilt that it was his fault. He knew it was his fault.
Yeah, I mean, while they were on the mat, he said, "Oh, I learned so much about my daughter," and she was just kind of silent. And I was like, "Oh, she's thinking," and I learned my dad can't hold a beat. Like, oh man.
I give her credit, though.
Yeah.
I give her so much credit for handling that situation that way. Her and Mark, holy mackerel, 2 champions of showing empathy, showing care and support to other people in moments of extreme frustration and extreme disappointment. It really speaks to their strengths, and I applaud them both. Let's cross the finish line.
I'll go. I am gonna just shit on Jonathan. I still do not like Jonathan. I think he is dead. I think he is truly emotionless. I'm surprised if they haven't broken up already. And if I watched them together on this season, I would break up with him. So that's my crossing the finish line.
Scorching hot. Mine's a little lighter. I really love this episode because I want to go to Japan someday. And I hope that day is sooner than I think. And I thought that this episode really had some awesome cultural aspects that if I would have run this leg, I would just look back on it and be so happy to have been in that theater either played the drums or watched one of you play the drums and just see that performance up close and personal, to be able to put on that mawashi and wrap it around and, to whatever, wrestle with it, and then barrel into a sumo wrestler and feel his fat against me and, just realize how incredible an athlete that person is. Anyway, to end up at that temple at the end with the peacefulness, the beauty of that, but also the chaos of Osaka and the city life. I just really thought this was an awesome cultural experience in Japan, and I look forward to going there someday. And thank you, Amazing Race, for being a window into things like that. It's amazing. I love that. It's my favorite part of the show.
I felt like I didn't expect certain things in these Asian countries. For example, I would have thought that Han and Holden, maybe they pride themselves on being Asian. I guess they're not from Japan or Hong Kong, so it hasn't worked to their favor yet. They may go to another country in Asia next that it may work to their favor. We'll see. But out of nowhere, Carson starts breaking out Japanese. Mm-hmm. And, any little, I don't know that really gave him an edge, but it doesn't hurt. And it's always interesting to see when contestants pull out unexpected languages like that.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Nicole, for joining me tonight on the ReRACEables podcast. We will be back next week to discuss episode 3 of The Amazing Race, season 37. In the meantime, if you are watching Survivor, be sure to check out my blog for this season 48, tribalcouncilblog.com, at tribalcouncilblog on Instagram. Check that out. Looking forward to next week, and we'll be back right here on the ReRACEables podcast to bring it all to you. See you next week.